So, good morning everyone, and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living. I'm sitting here in Huntsville, Alabama with maybe 20 beautiful people, all wearing masks, respectful of one another, and these really challenging times that we're experiencing on this planet, especially in America. I spoke with my prayer partner in Canada, and he says they're having a spike of COVID cases that are so concerning that he said it's like a ghost town in Vancouver. He said it's so rare to see a person walking without a mask there. And he says our heart goes out to you in America. He was asking me about how many deaths we've had so far, and I said, yes, these are troubling times where it's important that we be respectful, that we be careful. A dear friend of mine was sharing that she got in a car with somebody and they were just journeying from one destination to another, and that simple act of not putting the mask on created a scenario for her that was less than comfortable. So let's all be careful. Let's make an agreement to do that. I only took my mask off to do this talk this morning, and it will go on directly after I finish. So I invite you to anchor yourself in the breath. It's something that is always there. And so much of what life is really about is learning how to consciously breathe. In fact, it's even as simple as just learning how to exhale. The tendency is when we're stressed, we'll hold our breath. And if we can just learn to consciously exhale, sometimes even sigh, it's like a release valve. It's like a letting go, a stopping, a surrendering into the grace of this incredible moment. And when we realize all we ever have is the present moment, well, then we can be conscious about how am I being in this present moment. Am I choosing to anchor myself in peace amidst the chaos all around me? Or am I letting the chaos all around me pull me into that chaos so that I am contagioned by the consciousness of anxiety and fear and confusion and whatever it is that we see so often on the news? I observed the protesters in Washington, D.C. yesterday screaming and yelling about a rigged election, and I found myself turning off the television and saying, I don't need to go there. Rather, I need to find that still place within myself. And then I found myself turning on some soft classical music and let it fill up the house with a vibration that was carrying me into that lyric, embracing, calm place. And I reflected when my little pug had the herniated disc and he was paralyzed. I found myself doing the same thing, putting on this soft music that was calming and soothing so that I could be there with him as he was going through 3.5 days of total paralysis, feeding him with an eyedropper, holding him in my arms, telling him he'd be okay. And I found the grace of those 3.5 days have sustained me as we now journey through this coronavirus experience that is not going away anytime soon. It's important to know the truth and not disassociate from the truth. The truth is this is going to be here for a while, and it's going to require that we use our conscious, proactive, responsive consciousness in order to navigate skillfully. And so we breathe, and we take responsibility for who we are and how we function in this world. We're strong, we're resolved, and we're respectful of each other. And so we know that we will make it through this journey that we're all experiencing together in a loving way, in a supportive way, so that we might assist each other. When we fall down, we can pick each other up. I know that life is a flow. And we're speaking about living in that flow for this month of November. And on my Zen calendar this week, there was the beautiful John O'Donohue, who said, "May your life flow like the river, surprised at your own unfolding." And so when we let this river of life carry us, we will have experiences that may shock us, that may seem challenging, and they're surprising. But we can know that even though suffering is a given, growth is oftentimes optional. And so we choose to grow through these troubled times, to grow in wisdom, to grow in compassion, to grow in resolve, to grow in an intention to see the good and call it forth. And so as these troubled times call for a new consciousness, I am seeing on our planet the emergence of the divine feminine. I saw it in the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I saw it in the appointments of the next Secretary of State, a woman. And I love the fact that we're acknowledging the wisdom of that gender in a patriarchal world. I am noticing and seeing the collaboration of different species, different animals helping one another. A friend of mine saw a video of a crow helping a hedgehog cross a busy highway, pecking at his little butt so he could make it across the highway without getting hurt. And she said it was so moving to see two species assisting one another in navigating a freeway. And so I am hopeful that we as the human race can also awaken our hearts to embracing those who might seem different, who might seem other, so that we can bring a togetherness on this planet for all people, of all races, of all nationalities. One life unfolding itself, and we are that life, surprised at our own unfolding. So as you're ready to come back and journey with me for this brief time together, I invite you to open your eyes, put your hands over your heart, feel that commitment that's there, that you're making to yourself. We had a beautiful revealing service here at the center this morning, and I'm always touched by all of you and your growth and your evolution. And someone intimated they were thinking about going on Match.com, but this beautiful soul said, I think what I really need to do is to have a relationship with myself and to have a love affair with myself. And maybe affirm what you would to your partner, affirm it to you. You know, when I did Sam and Vicky's wedding, you know, with this ring I give you my heart. I give it to myself. I have no greater gift to give. May my heart be your shelter. May my arms be your home. May my eyes give you hope. May my smile bring you joy. Could we do that for ourselves? So that when we look in the mirror, we can see that there's someone that actually loves me that's looking back at me, and life is truly a reflection of consciousness. So when we see a lover looking back at us from everywhere, we realize it's because we're putting out that love vibration and we're seeing it reflected in the world. I was sharing with those in the circle this morning that I've fallen in love with a rescue dog. Jody calls him Reese, I call him Cooper. He's a dog that had been abandoned at the pound. He was covered with fleas. He's a brown chocolate lab with a little white patch on his chest. She rescued him right before he was going to be euthanized. And so being that he was covered with fleas, they took the fleas off. He was suffering with that. They neutered him, and now he has a hematoma where his gonads used to be, so it's swollen down there, and he's painful, and he's licking himself. And then they found out he also has heartworm. So he's going through that painful heartworm treatment. And as this dog, he's such a gentle, calm dog, he waddled over to where I was teaching class on Wednesday morning, and he put his head right on my knee, and for an hour and a half, he just rested it there, looking up with those doughy brown eyes of his, and I'm rubbing his little ears and feeling his head in my hands. And there was medicine in that experience. So could I know that that was an appointment with destiny? Was I there for him? Was he there for me? Or maybe were we there for each other? And it was a soul-to-soul experience. Interspecies, you might say yes, but really not so much. Because sometimes I have a little sign in my garage, all you need is love and a dog. And right there, it showed up on my lap. So life will bring you these things if you're open and receptive to it. As I said in that opening meditation, we're speaking about living in the flow this month, and it's all based on this lovely book, In the Flow of Life by Eric Butterworth. And so I took some chapters out of the book and I'm expanding on them because it was really moving, it still is moving. And this is the third week, and I'm speaking about the healing stream. Now the first week I spoke about living from within outward. So many of us live from the outside in. We let what's happening in the world dictate how we react, instead of finding that beautiful place of calm and clarity and peace, and then living from that in this world that is kind of crazy and confusing and out of sorts, you might say, but yet we get to carry that beautiful presence wherever we go. The second week I spoke about, which was last week, is life comes to pass. And it's all about the beauty of change. You know, relationships to come into your life and they go out of your life, as painful as that may seem. Careers, if you've been around as long as I've had so many careers, and they come into your life to go out of your life. I fancied when I was a young man that I would be a world-famous dancer. Well, I got to do a lot of dancing in New York City, but that came in to go out of my life. I thought I'd be this world-famous landscape artist. Well, I have a lovely garden. That came into my life to go out of my life. But the last thing I ever thought I would do was this. And so when you realize that life has a different idea for you than you have for yourself, then we can actually surrender and allow life to unfold and be surprised at our own unfolding. You know, surprised at our own unfolding. I find it's interesting that some people will come to like a Circle of Love gathering, and this is the year anniversary of our last one at Banning Mill. And they'll come and attend a Circle of Love gathering, and they'll experience this vibration of love. And then the next thing I know, they're moving to Huntsville. I don't know how many people are moving to Huntsville to just be in this vortex of love. So what if in that journey we trust in that flow that carries us to where we're meant to be? So this week I'm talking about the healing stream, which is one of the chapters of this book. We're doing a class on Wednesday morning, and it's called Catching the Threads. And it's based on a book, a compilation of essays called Healers on Healing. And each week we cover 3 dynamic healer, and without exception, they're sharing their healing stream. Norman Cousins, his healing stream was laughter. He healed himself from Lou Gehrig's disease just by putting on Marx Brothers movies and Abbott and Costello, and he found himself laughing in his hospital room, and he went into remission. There was an intelligence within him. So his healing stream is to offer that to all of us. Come on in. There's the healing stream of compassion. Could we be compassionate with ourselves as we're going through a physical challenge? I know Anne-Marie broke her foot, and so that's awakening compassion and empathy and a different way of navigating. We all have to find a way to navigate in this journey called life. So in this lovely little chapter called The Healing Stream, let me give you what Eric Butterworth, he's a Unity minister in New York City. He was the competing minister with Raymond Charles Barker. He was at Carnegie Hall, Eric Butterworth, while Raymond Charles was at Alice Tully Hall, 2 huge works in New York City. And you might say that Raymond Charles Barker is my grandfather, because I come through the lineage of Raymond Charles Barker, through Kennedy Schultz, and now to me. But the irony is that Raymond Charles Barker studied at Unity Village, and his mentors were Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. So you might say I'm a unitic in a religious science outfit, but I don't know what the heck that means. Anyway, Eric Butterworth, he loves to quote scripture, and he starts by using Jesus. And Jesus said, it's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Now, what is the kingdom? The word that Jesus used in Aramaic for kingdom was the word Malkutha. And in Aramaic, Malkutha means the sovereign counsel of God. In other words, the divine guidance from within. So Jesus was saying, it's the Father's good pleasure to give you this guidance from within. And he says, seek it first and everything will be added unto you. So Eric Butterworth builds on that as he describes what this healing stream is. He says, the kingdom in you is the flow of the universe in focus as you. It's the divine focusing itself as you. And he says, the inheritance is ours. And for we are the living enterprise of this creative process. And he says, but you must claim it. It doesn't mean anything unless you claim it. To know, in Sanskrit they say, Tatvam asi, thou art that. Could we know ourselves as that? Emerson says we sell ourselves for rags and riches, but if you knew who you really were, it would bring you to your knees. So he's asking us to do the same thing. To know that the divine lives in you as you, and it's inviting you to access the passageway of that awareness that's always fresh. And he says, you must claim it and know that you are entitled to the fullness of life and then get into the flow. You are entitled to the fullness of life, get into the flow. Now we're a prosperity teaching, New Thoughts of Prosperity teaching. Get into the flow of abundance. It's not about money, it's about the flow, about creative self-expression. I'm an artist. Artists need to create. Every Saturday night I have to tap into the universe and say, what is Spirit going to say tomorrow? And to get into that flow of creativity, to get into the flow of peace. I've been a real junkie for peace. Peace is the highest level of abundance. So could we live in that peace that passes all understanding when everybody else isn't at peace? When they're all out there anxious and worried and fearful and fretting, and they want to come and they want to hand you their fear and their fret and their confusion, and then they call you up, oh my God, David, what if the Electoral College, I said, let's not go down that path. Oh, they got the arms, they got the weapons, what if they, let's build on something where we can be hope-filled, right, Gene? It's called hope-filled, filled with hope. To trust our better angels, that we were made for these times, and that this is bringing out the good in one another. Could we see that and call it forth? It was Goethe that said, if you label someone, you limit them. But if you see their potential, you're literally calling it forth. So he's saying the same thing. Claim the divine, claim the wholeness, claim the healing, claim the unity consciousness that's happening on the planet. Claim the cooperation. I'm enthusiastic. He says, God is a circle that is centered in you, and all the attributes of the infinite are focused as you. They're flowing forth from you. He says, you are in this flow. You are this flow at the point of where you are. Thus, you are a child of the universe. You are a son and daughter of God. Meditate on this tremendous insight. And it means that you are created in the image and likeness of this infinite idea. You are the only begotten, ever begetting itself in you. That was Meister Eckhart. He stole that from him. You are the only begotten of God from the standpoint. No matter what other influences may have left their masks on you from the outside. Oh, their marks on you. I got masked on my consciousness. But left their marks on you from the outside. There is that of you that is begotten only of God. Wow, could you meditate on that? Could you know the divinity within yourself? Which is forever the flowering of the divine flow from the inside. Imagine yourself flowering from the inside as love, as compassion, as empathy. Jean, beloved Jean over here, gave me two butterfly cocoons in a container last Sunday, and it's been sitting on my dining room table all week, and I found myself sitting there this morning meditating on those two little cocoons, thinking, are they alive or are they dead? And I had to have faith that it takes 7 to 10 days for them to go through this process where they become liquid and then they reform as a butterfly and then they give birth. So I have to have a little faith and trust. Could we have faith in our planet that on January 20th we're going to have a new president and we're going to be launching down a whole different way and we're going to have a coronavirus plan in the federal government, and we're going to face systemic racism in our country. We're not going to pretend that it doesn't exist. We're going to start loving one another. I'm so hope-filled. My brother Gene and I, we live in that same place. So he says this flowering of the divine flow must come from the inside, and this is the fundamental truth. All else are incidental facts. This is the fundamental truth. I had a phrase early on when I was a brand new student of truth, and it was just, let God be God in me. Could we let this presence, whatever you want to call God, God's such a big word, divine love, creative wisdom, the totality of possibilities. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind, he uses the metaphor for God of the universe as the totality of possibilities. So could we be possibility thinkers? To think in terms, what if we actually respected one another and loved one another and didn't see other? What if it was about we instead of me? I find this idea in America that we have to be such individualist that even a friend of mine was saying that Judge Alito on the Supreme Court said it's an invasion of our rights to wear a mask. Well, what about putting on a seatbelt? What about not smoking in restaurants? Those are respectful things that we do. They're the law. What about stopping at a stoplight? When the red light goes on, do you say, hell no, I'm an individualist, I'm going to plow through that stop sign or that stoplight? Some do. But I choose to stop when it says stop, and I choose to go when it says go, because I have respect for the flow, respect for the rules. And these aren't rules that are imposing something. They're here to make us safer. I was one of those people that said I would never, ever get a cell phone. Now I don't have a house phone. All I have is a cell phone. I was one of these elder people that said, I'll never do this texting sort of thing. Now I text rather than phone call because it's so much easier. So I guess I was wrong. I guess I can evolve. I can grow. So could we embrace our own evolution, not only as individuals, but as a country? Could we evolve as a country? There's a sign, a beautiful painting downtown, and it's like 4 stories up, and it's of a beautiful young black girl, and she's holding up a rose, and there's a butterfly by her, and it said, Women's Vote, 1920, 2020, 100 years. And then it says, it just says, vote. And she's looking up to the sky, and she's smiling. And every time I see that downtown, I'm so hopeful. This beloved lady came last week for the first time, and I encouraged her to vote, and she was reluctant to do so, and she came this Sunday, and she said, I felt so good when I did that. I felt so good when I did it too. Whether you think your vote counts or not, it's just so powerful to take a stand and do what you can do. Trey and I, twice a year, we clean up 5 Points. There's a 5 Points cleanup crew. The green team shows up in 5 Points. They give you a plastic bag, and they give you some pickers and some gloves, and you walk around and you pick up trash all morning long. And every time, every spring and fall that we do that, we feel so good about ourselves, carrying that bag of trash, cleaning up the streets. It's just our way of participating in a shared democracy. And I love this idea of a democracy. When our founding fathers originally were writing the Declaration of Independence, it was life, liberty, and property. But Thomas Jefferson, in his wisdom, changed property, meaning that you could only vote if you had property. You were only an American citizen if you had property, if you owned something. In his wisdom, he changed it to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, something that we could all share in. So what if in this fragile thing called a democracy, we have to keep evolving and step out of the old way of thinking into a new way of expanded awareness? That's true spiritually too. God doesn't have a religion. I remember I was asked to speak at the temple once, and I said there are no chosen people. Well, I thought I was going to be chased out of the temple. I said, because all people are God's chosen people. We can't have just one. And then I was asked to speak at the Methodist Church, and I said something equally outlandish, and they said, which God do you worship? And I said, God doesn't have a religion. And then they started walking out of the room. And so I realized not everybody is ready for the truth. But the Bible says the truth shall set you free. So could we open to the truth, even though the truth might be uncomfortable? Maybe we were looking through a lens and we weren't seeing the capacity that we were able to see. And I can see clearly now. It's not one way or the highway. There are many paths, and they all lead to the same place. That's what I'm learning from this beautiful book, this compilation, Healers on Healing. These are from all dimensions. Several of them are from the shamanic tradition, and I love the shamanic tradition because it relates to the earth. It's a very feminine-based religion, and it talks about how we are one with the mother, the divine mother, Pachamama. I love when they reference the mother. And they talk about when you take a shamanic journey, you're moving from ordinary consciousness, which is this logical mind that we live in all the time. You're moving into non-ordinary consciousness. You might call it a metaphor, a parable. You're moving into a koan, you're moving into a story, a fairy tale, a journey. And what happens is we shift out of this local identity into possibility thinking. And I used to kind of think that was silly, but now I kind of enjoy stepping out of me long enough to access a flow of awareness that is creative by its very nature. And then it can point the way to something that is so powerful and healing. That's the purpose of myth. That's the purpose of fairy tales. They're pointing to something greater. When each of us as a little child watched The Wizard of Oz, that was the classic myth of the prodigal son. How you have to leave your family, and you find yourself, and then you go home again. And what you realize, as Dorothy did, and as everybody does when they go on a spiritual journey, you find yourself. And you realize that it was already there, as Dorothy did at the very end. What have you learned? I learned to never look any further than my own backyard. Because if I can't find it there, I never really lost it to begin with. And then they said, that's it. It's there. It's already there. The kingdom is at hand. It's within you. It's your birthright. Can you claim it? In this now moment. You don't have to earn it by doing good deeds and penance. No, it's right now in the midst of whatever your experience. It's there. And when we say yes, and we're willing to tap into it, it can be the resource that can sustain us and uplift us in no matter what we're going through. We had a class this Wednesday, and I didn't realize that one of our congregation suddenly had appendicitis, and it was going to burst. And he went to the hospital, and thank God he's all right. You know, these little things happen. Could we be there for each other and sustain each other? Another young man, his grandfather in India passed of the coronavirus over there. And he says, my grandfather had been married for 55 years with his wife. And he says, my grandmother called me and she's crying and she's grieving the loss of the grandfather. And I said to him, well, please share for me that he's still there with her. I've learned in this long-lived life that we don't go anywhere. The body, yes, the body leaves, but spirit is eternal. And to know ourselves as that is a whole different way of navigating in life. Yesterday on my Zen calendar, it was Lily Tomlin speaking, and she made me laugh because she said something so outrageous, kind of reminded me of you, Gigi. She said, if you can't be direct, why be at all? Yeah, if you can't be direct, why be at all? So could we be direct and speak the truth? My prayer partner was telling me when he had a health food store in Vancouver, this one woman came every day to the health food store, and she complained every single day about the prices going up. And finally, in his own direct sort of way, he says, what do you expect me to live on, chopped liver? And of course she got mad at him and she left the health food store. I says, oh, you spoke the truth. People don't necessarily want to hear the truth. So could we live this life from a different order of being and let it guide us on the journey? This is a wonderful book. I was thinking of teaching it, but it's way too big. It's called Drinking from the River of Light. Again, the metaphor of the river. And that this light of the one is all there. So could, in our healing flow, access the light. You know, Jesus said, don't put your light under a bushel, let it shine. The word for light that they used when they said, let there be light, was Shekinah. Shekinah is the light within. So could we let this light within shine? In the Quran, they say, Nur ala Nur, light upon light. The light in Keisha meets the light in David. It's one light, one river of light. The light in Jake meets the light in David. It's one light, one river. Could we meet in that light? And so he talks about this is the expression of life, and that it wants to flow, and it wants to illumine the dark places in our life, the confused places. And here's how he does it in his own beautiful poetic way. I thought this might be helpful. His little chapter, Going with the Stream, and he quotes Yogananda. And Yogananda says, never give up and then surrender. Almost seems counterintuitive. Never give up and then surrender. And he talks about the salmon swimming upstream, how they have to swim and they never give up and they never get up. And when they get there, I've arrived, I am home, I can now surrender. Never give up that we're going to have a new administration on January 20th. And I like that Joe Biden is acting as if he's getting his cabinet set up. He's talking about his Corona task force. Never give up and then surrender. It's going to be what it's going to be. The future's not ours to see, but we never give up. So here's what he says. Watching those fish struggling through the rough water currents into the mouth of the delta, it took them effortlessly then into the sea, and the end of their effort was then to go with the stream. It's harder to accept this when the rough currents in our lives cause our suffering. It's hard when in pain to imagine that something deep and quiet underneath might be carrying us. But sometimes we're asked to ride the rough currents until some deeper sea of knowing can lift us up. I don't know about you, but when I've been in those tough times in my life, when relationships have been ending, when careers have been falling apart, when I don't have a clue where I am, ultimately there comes a time when I get to surrender and I get to let it all fall away so that what wants to emerge can emerge. He's saying the same thing. Sometimes we're asked to ride rough currents until some deeper sea of knowing can lift us up. And though it's hard to make sense of it, holding on and letting go work hand in hand. Holding on and letting go work hand in hand. This paradox also applies to our life as expressions of the one life. Holding on and letting go. What are we holding on to? Are we holding on to the love of a friend? Are we holding on to the community that sustains us, and then letting go, and then trusting that life is going to give us what is ours. Oftentimes it's a challenge. Life doesn't always give us the fun, cozy things. Sometimes it gives us, an unexpected death of a friend so that we can navigate through those troubled times, and yet knowing the truth in the midst of that they never really left us. So he goes on at the very bottom to say, what is most instructive then is the immeasurable way our seeing changes, our perception changes. When we can embrace the journey, the part that's difficult, instead of running away from it, saying, it made me into the person who I am, and now I see differently. I wouldn't know as much as I do about love had I not been totally wrong about love. I used to think love was an external thing and that they were the source of my good. And then when that outer something was taken away, what a great gift it was. Now I see that nobody is the source of that. It is from within. That's the kingdom that Jesus spoke about. So we begin to see, our seeing changes from staying so engaged and then surrendering. Sustained inquiry changes how we see and hear. To inquire, what am I seeing now? What is important now? What is meaningful now at this stage of life? Remember, the soul wants to find meaning in life, whereas the ego wants to find answers. So when we shift from an answer, fix the problem kind of consciousness, and we start to say, how is this helping evolve my soul, like beautiful Jean is doing in her reflecting? Do I really want a relationship with some other human being, or do I want a meaningful dance with another like-minded soul, the Anamkara, the soul friend? Sam Brigman was my Anamkara, he was my soul friend. And when you find them, they were there all along. They don't possess, they don't grasp, they don't dictate, they just want to flower in your presence as you flower in theirs. So he goes on to say, this perception changes how we know life and how we know the world. And like a climber who never gives up, we arrive at the summit only to surrender to the vastness of the world that's all around us. I saw this thing on ABC Nightly News, and it was the end where they had Person of the Week, and it was a young woman who had climbed this steep rock surface that was completely perpendicular, and she didn't know if she could do it, but she got to the very top. She didn't give up, and when she got there, it's as if she was joyful. I succeeded. Last night I was watching this documentary on D-Day, the Battle of Normandy, and my father was in D-Day, and so was my husband's father in D-Day. They were both pilots in the Air Force, and I didn't realize what a momentous occasion that was. And they showed how the Germans had the whole coastline of Europe cordoned off with battle things, and there was like a wall. They couldn't. So in order for the Allies to break through that, they had to find a place. And Hitler thought they would come at the narrowest part by Calais. But the British decided that they would go to Normandy, where nobody thought they would go. It was much more treacherous waters. And the reason they thought no one would go there is because it had sheer cliffs. And how are the Allied forces going to enter into Europe if they have to go up sheer cliffs? But the bombs were falling and the bombs were falling. So what happened through grace was enough of the rock fell from the cliffs. So when they managed to get some of the boats landed, the Allied troops had this thing, this is 1945, where they could shoot a little hook, and the hook would go up there, and then they would pull themselves up, and it was 100 feet up that they would have to go on these sheer cliffs. But because of the bombs had created enough rubble, they only had 40 feet to go. So through grace, they were able to scramble up to the top and break through that line and enter into Europe and rescue France, and then the rest is history. The war ended because of the conviction and the perseverance of some who never gave up and yet surrendered once they got there. It's really interesting how this all works. So yeah, could we embrace the flow of life wherever life is? And there have been other tough times. It was good for me to watch this thing on D-Day because those were very dark times. Gigi lived through it, and we made it through those times. We made it through someone like Hitler. And sometimes I'm incredulous. How could people follow such a person? But now I can understand how they can, because it's through propaganda and through pitting people against other people that these people can arise. So instead of playing that game of denial, I can say, could we learn from the past and let it inform the present? And could we learn from the future that if we don't do certain things, our future looks very dismal? This environmental consciousness needs to take place on the planet right now. my very first Christmas with Trey was 1977, and I gave him, he went back to graduate school to become a meteorologist, but he couldn't do the physics and he couldn't do the chemistry, and then he had an emotional breakdown. He was in therapy, so at age 26, he dropped out of graduate school, and I realized that he's not going to be a weatherman. But that Christmas, I made him a weather book. And I took sheets and I did the 12 months of the year and I put photographs of him and me and different weather things. And he's been keeping those weather books from 1977 to 2020. And his biggest concern is, who am I going to leave these weather books to when I die? There are weather books and weather books. And he did charts, but he's kept copious records of the weather. And he can show you how the weather is heating up all over the planet. We can't be weather denials. We can't be science denials. So could we let that inform the present? How are we going to be? You know, my beloved Mark Accomando, he left the ministry, what I do here, and he became a therapist. He's working in Palm Desert. And now he's just been elected president of some environmental group where they're trying to go green. And he has an electric car, and he's got solar panels on his house, and he's passionate about shifting the consciousness around how we relate to our planet. You know, so could we let the future inform the present and do the mindful thing, the right thing? You know, we recycle. I'm an avid recycler. I break down the cardboard boxes. I don't buy things in bottles anymore because they don't recycle bottles, so now I buy things in cans. I used to never drink out of a can, but they recycle cans, so the environmentalist in me says the cans and everything gets recycled in our home. It's just something that I feel right about. I have beautiful trees in my garden, and Gigi was saying all she sees are leaves now because they're falling. But to me, the leaves are like black gold because we rake the leaves up, we carry them back to the compost heap, and we have this huge compost heap in the back of the garden. And then every spring and every fall, I have wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow of this beautiful composted that came from the leaves. So instead of seeing the leaves as an inconvenience, I had a friend who lived in Queens, New York, and they didn't want to have to deal with the leaves, so they cut down all the trees in the yard, and they went even one step further. They got rid of the grass and put cement in so they wouldn't have to mow the grass. Now, if we're going to look at nature and see it as an inconvenience, that says something about us as a species, does it not? So anyway, the neighbor lady asked if I wanted the leaves that my tree dropped in her yard. I said, no, you can have those. That's my gift to you. I have a sense of humor too. So I asked, what would be the greatest healing stream? And there's so many healing streams, and I invite you to take that question because it'll help you see differently. You know, maybe a healing stream for you would be where you connect with the divine. Because I was a dancer, sometimes I'll just put music on and I'll start dancing. It's therapeutic to dance. I can let my body feel free. Judy, I know she loves to dance. Sometimes to just put music on and let yourself dance and not care who's looking. Dance as if nobody's watching. They really don't care. And then just to do whatever. I know Hank used to play golf. Golf can be a very healing thing. There he is. I love watching the Masters. Today when I go home, I'll watch the final round of the Masters. It's like watching a meditation for me. So could we discover what that healing stream is in life and learn to let it be a blessing for us? You know, we are here to bless this life that we've been given. So one of the greatest blessings for me is a beautiful Irish saint now. He died at 52 very suddenly. His name is John O'Donoghue, and this was the last work that he did. It's called To Bless the Space Between Us. And he talks about if we can live in a consciousness where we bless what is, you know, we bless the life that we've been given. The heart attack was such a great gift because now I bless this life. Jake had a physical challenge and he survived. Now he really has a deeper sense of gratitude. You know, so could we bless what life has given us, even though it might not have been the most beautiful thing? And here's how John expresses it in this book. It took him years to write it. He says, you know, in Ireland, you don't say, how are you? You say, and may you be blessed with many more years to come. May you be blessed with a beautiful child. May you be blessed with great success and joy and hope in your future life. You know, he said this is the beauty of a blessing. He said a blessing evokes a privileged intimacy. It touches those tender membranes where the human heart cries out to the divine ground. That's like that kingdom of heaven that Jesus is speaking about. You know, we connect our humanity with our divinity, and we do that through blessing. When I was a little boy, I remember there was a song, I think it was Patti Page, that said, "When I'm worried and I can't sleep, I count my blessings instead of sheep, and you'll fall asleep counting your blessings." Anyway, and I got that as a kid. So he's saying the same essential thing. Blessings evoke this privileged intimacy with the universe. It touches a tender membrane where the human heart cries out to its own divine nature. He said, a blessing is not a sentiment or a question. It is a gracious invocation where the human heart pleads with its own divine heart. There is nothing more intimate in a life than the secret under territory where it anchors. The secret under territory where it anchors. To find that place where you can access the blessing. To be grateful for the life that you've been given. To be grateful for this beautiful community. To be grateful, friends like Sam Brigman, who was a friend right up to the very end. You know, he says, our times are desperate now for meaning and belonging. In the parched deserts of this post-modernity, a blessing can be like a discovery of a fresh well. It would be lovely if we could rediscover our power to bless one another. I want you all to know that you bless my lives just by being here, every single one of you. And he said, when a blessing is invoked, it changes the atmosphere. Some of the plenitude flows into our hearts from the invisible neighborhood of our own loving kindness. A blessing, once we start blessing, we're blessed. It's this boomerang principle. When we give out gratitude, we reap the gratitude. As we bless another, we're blessed in the blessing. He's showing the cyclical action. He says, in a dead wall, a new window starts to open. In a dense darkness, a path starts to glimmer. And into a broken heart, healing falls like a morning dew. He said, it's ironic that so often we continue to live like paupers, though our inheritance of spirit is so vast. That's what Jesus was saying. The quiet eternal that dwells in our souls is silent and yet subtle. In the activity of blessing, it emerges to embrace and nurture us. You know, to say a blessing always or usually starts with the word may. You know, we do the loving kindness meditation. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease, and may I be happy. And then you extend it to other and you say, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease, and may you be happy. And then we take it to the whole existing universe. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well, because we're not separate. We're moving from me to we. May we be filled with loving kindness, and so it is. I can't remember the rest of the damn thing. Okay, let us begin to learn how to bless one another. And whenever you give a blessing returns to enfold you. Whenever you bless anything, you're blessed. So let's just go into a little blessed closing meditation and bless the chair that you're sitting in. Notice how it supports you. Bless this body that encases your heart and your lungs and your brain and your beautiful body that moves so beautifully. So we bless this body. Let us bless our relationships. How truly they bless us just by being in our world, by assisting us, by holding our hands, by looking into our eyes and seeing our wholeness sometimes when we can't. Let us bless this beautiful country that we live in, a democracy that's still a democracy, where our vote does count. And so we bless this democracy, this fragile but yet beautiful democracy of our country. Let us bless this planet that nurtures us, that gives us oxygen to breathe, that gives us beauty to witness, that gives us the magic of the interconnectivity with the trees and the animals and the birds that sing and the oceans that flow, to bless this planet. Let us bless the life that we've been given. And let's look down upon it from the balcony, and let's bow to this life, this sacred life that we've been given, that is ours to tend. And let us bless it by making a commitment to serve it in the highest way possible. I bless this life by giving it beautiful thoughts to think. I bless this life by choosing peace over chaos and anxiety. I bless this life by embracing the flow of change from within and without. I bless this life by accepting the healing stream that is always there, the God in me that meets the God in everyone I see, because truly there's only one here, the one life, God's life, perfect. And so as we bless the life that we've been given, the divine life and the human life, they come together in a congruency, in a harmony, in an intimacy of belonging. And then we hear Jesus saying the two greatest commands were to love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might, because it is what you are. And then to love your neighbor as yourself, because in truth we are not separate, we are each other. And so we claim the blessing of this blessing, and we get into the flow of this blessed energy, and we leave here today blessing the car that we drive, blessing the food that we eat, blessing the smiles that we see, blessing the masks that we wear, blessing the health that we cherish, blessing our country in every way. So let your resolve be strong. Find the intention within your heart to be direct. How else can you be? And to surprise yourself as your life unfolds in its own blessed sort of way. I invite you to put your hands over your heart, to feel the sacred heart that's within us and all around us, the one heart, where head and heart come together in the bodhicitta, the heart-mind. And let's say the heart salutation. I honor you.
I honor you.
I respect you.
I respect you.
I love you.
I love you.
You are the deepest aspect of myself.
You are the deepest aspect of myself.
The beloved within me bows to the beloved within you.
The beloved within me bows to the beloved within you.
This is the kingdom of heaven.
This is the kingdom of heaven.
And it is ours.
It is ours.
And we claim it.
And we claim it.
And now we open our eyes. We look out at the world all around us with its beauty. We open our hearts. We open our hands. We let our energy shine and flow. And we claim our rightful mask, the universe, custom design, just for you. Thank everyone for sending in their tithes. Oh, by the way, there's a little pen out there in the basket. I ordered them. It says, I have arrived, I am home at CSL, and it has the phone number. So you're all welcome to take a pen. They write beautifully.